Hey guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Well, Momster, I don't know, you gotta call her something awful. Susan Smith is due for her parole hearing next week, which is November 20th. And you know, she's hopeful that she's gonna get out on parole. And I don't know about you guys, but I sure as hell hope not. What I can tell you is that she's already had over 100 letters written to the parole board opposing her release. And for those that don't remember, Susan Smith, she's in prison for the cold-blooded murders of her two young boys in 1994 after driving them into the lake in her car, and then she blamed it on being carjacked by a black man. Yeah.
Search helicopters and police dogs have been combing the area for the past 21 hours, and still no luck.
The longer time it goes, of course, the more worried we become. But we have no reason to believe he's harmed them.
Local, state, and federal agents are working out of this command post at the courthouse. They're looking for 3-year-old Michael Smith and his younger brother, 14-month-old Alexander. This all started as Susan Smith was driving up Highway 49 to a friend's house at about 9 o'clock last night. She was stopped at this red light when the suspect, armed with a handgun, jumped in the passenger side of the car and ordered her to shut up and drive. Smith drove east on 49 for 5 miles when the gunman ordered her to get out of the car and said the children were staying with him.
She asked to get her children out, and he stated that he didn't have time, but he promised that he would not hurt them.
Police hope the suspect was telling the truth. Today, search teams returned to the lake where Smith says she was dropped off. Law enforcement agencies across the nation have been advised of the kidnappings, and even area merchants are trying to help. A composite picture of the suspect is already up in storefront windows.
I just think it's horrible. I mean, you know, it's just hard on the parents and stuff. I couldn't even imagine even driving down the road and somebody just trying to get in and take her.
The kidnappings have shaken the folks of Union. They say things like this just don't happen here. Michael and Alexander are badly missed, and folks say things won't be back to normal until the boys are home.
To the man, me and my wife plead to him to please return our children to us safely.
From outside the command post, the father of the missing children made a desperate plea to anyone who will help.
We are going over. It is harder as time goes by to deal with, but we are keeping our spirits high and our hopes high at this time.
David Smith never left Susan's side. He was right. He supported her, believed every word that she said, and then when she confessed, I mean, it was like a bombshell to him. He has lived with this pain, and he thinks about these boys every single day. And I can tell you that I'm pretty sure Susan doesn't think about them at all. Here's a recent interview with David Smith talking about his fears with the parole hearing coming up.
Worried that they'll have sympathy for. I don't know exactly how the parole board works, as this will be the first time. Meaning, I don't know if it's a majority rules or if it has to be unanimous for her to get paroled, but if it has to be just a majority rules, that really scares me. Because it'll only take a couple to have sympathy for and to think that 30 years is enough. And I'm terrified that she could possibly get out. A lot of family, a lot of friends say it won't happen, especially not the first time. And I think that too, but still a possibility it still could happen.
What can you maybe do to impress upon the parole board that 30 years is not enough time?
I don't know. I guess I haven't thought that far yet. But I think, and I think that's why I'm leaning more towards just speaking from the heart, than having something written down and having to look down and read it and then make eye contact going back and forth. I want to look at them. I want to look them in their eyes the whole time I'm speaking to them. And hopefully that will make an impact.
I think as we spoke with the Union County Sheriff, who could potentially be asked his opinion, and talking to Tommy Pope, the prosecutor who handled the case, and some others, everybody says their recommendation is that she not receive parole, based a little bit on some of her behavior as it relates to her time in prison. Have you followed any of that at all? And what are your thoughts?
I haven't tried to keep up with Susan while she'd been in prison, but when something would happen and it would make, breaking news, I know about things she's done in prison, with affairs with the guards and drug use. But have I tried to keep up with what she's doing in prison? No. I've tried to forgive her. And I think I was doing a pretty good job up until this year.
Is this year harder because of the parole hearing and because it's another one of those milestone anniversaries? 30 years, I mean, it seems like a long time, but
I think it's more the parole hearing that's causing me concern and worry. And then knowing that I'm going to go back every so often and go through it again.
That's right. Depending upon what the parole board decides, this could be an every year type of thing.
Right.
This could be an every 5-year type of thing.
Exactly.
You have to keep making an argument. How tough is that going to be?
I don't know. I haven't got that far yet, but if it's anything like the first one, it's going to be some long years ahead.
I feel for him so much. The pain he has, and obviously he has his new wife with him there, but he has to go back next week, 30 years later, and relive the pain of his boys being missing and finding out that his wife, their mother, killed them. I cannot imagine the pain that David goes through. And he's keeping those boys in the forefront. And I really hope that they do listen to him, as well as these letters and the experts saying she needs to stay locked up. And speaking of her misbehavior behind bars, well, she's had the affairs, like he said, and there's one guard who has come out since and spoke about his relationship with Susan Smith. All right, this is former corrections captain Alfred Rowe. He had an affair with Susan Smith when he worked in the prison. And he originally met her early on, and their relationship cost him his career.
When and how did you meet Susan Smith?
I first met Susan Smith probably my second or third night on duty at the Women's Center. She had come up for medication call, which was done every afternoon or evening at 6 p.m. for the nighttime. And we always had to have somebody there to watch over them, make sure they took their medicine. Medication was given, dumped into their hand out of a little medicine cup, and somebody had to watch them swallow it and then check to make sure they swallowed. And so that's the first time I saw Susan Smith, was at medication calls.
Were you aware of what she was charged with at that time and kind of some of the history, having lived in South Carolina?
Yes, I was very much aware.
I have to say, not only am I disgusted with his behavior, obviously, and he goes on, I'm going to only play parts of this, to say how much Susan knew that having an affair with a guard was against the rules, but, yeah, him, he, that's wrong for him too. But you think he could have found a better shirt to wear for the interview than one talking about how he's a poppy and having all of his grandchildren's names on his shirt. Yeah.
Over the first year, the females started, all of them would open up to me and talk to me. They become more comfortable with me being there so they could complain. They knew I would listen and then try and deal with their complaints, which was my job. And they said other captains and lieutenants would maybe just hear what they said or pretend to hear and go on. They wouldn't do anything, but you actually do something. And so Susan was one of them that would come to me and say, we're having this problem in the dorm with this officer on this shift, or there's these two girls are constantly bickering or fighting at night, or whatever the case may be. She just started coming to me more often with those types of little, I guess, complaints or informational pieces that I would have to look into. And she would actually talk to me about things that were going on in other units other than her own, because of people talking to her, because they felt like she was more in tune with the staff members to get things done.
How was she seen through other inmates? Was she seen as a leader?
I guess a leader would be a good word for it. She had quite a following from what I could see. Everybody liked her for the most part. There might have been one or two that didn't, but it wasn't for what she done to get into prison. I'm sure it was something that she may have said or done to them while they were incarcerated together. But she had quite a following of ladies.
What do you think made people want to follow her?
Susan had a characteristic about her that just made her friendly, approachable, and likable. She was always happy. I can't say that I ever saw her in a sad or depressed mood.
See, that makes me mad. She's always was happy. I never saw her depressed. Well, damn. She should have been sad. She should have been miserable. But you know why she wasn't? Because she's a psychopath. She is a monster. She could care less that she killed her two boys. She really couldn't. She hasn't learned a damn thing, and she's not even remotely, not even a slimmer, a sludge, anything. She's not remorseful at all. And that's the biggest reason, beyond many, many others, that she needs to remain in prison.
Now, occasionally she would talk about how she wished she was in a different unit, maybe because she was unhappy with what was happening in hers, but she was in a unit that specialized. Everyone in the unit had some type of mental issue that needed to be watched closer. You had to do more checks on their individual cells in that unit to make sure they weren't attempting suicide or, I guess, body deforming, or because a lot of times they would be cutters, or they would try and hang themselves just for attention, not to actually kill themselves, but just to get attention seekers.
So it sounds like it started off with the kind of being able to bend your ear on what was happening within the facility. When did it become something more?
I'd say about 16, 17 months into my time there. We had a staff death that occurred. My supervisor, the major, who was over all of security for the institution, suddenly passed away. Nobody knew he was even ill. And from what we understood, he did not know that he was sick. And he took a couple weeks off because he felt tired and never returned. And he was the one that the ladies really bent the ear of. He was the one that always listened to every complaint and took everyone's complaint serious, and that's what he instructed me to do when I came on. He was a retired New York City police officer of 30 years, and so he knew how to deal with people, and he could relate to these people because of what he done in New York. Drug charges, homicides, assault and battery. He saw it every night, and he knew how to talk and listen and react to what was being said from these ladies. And quite a few of them took it pretty hard. They even had a memorial service at the institution for the girls or ladies. Some of them act like big babies, others that grown and mature, depending on what they wanted. So they could change in a conversation on one heartbeat to the next of how they were acting. But once he passed away, Susan started coming to me and just talking about, I guess, issues, personal issues, how she was sad and disappointed in him not telling everyone that he was sick. And from what I knew, he didn't even know he was sick, but the girls weren't aware of that, and they didn't need to be told that part. But that's when it started being more. And in August of 2000 is when she started approaching me and talking about having sex, and how that she had been having sex, but she didn't specify. I thought she was talking about with her roommate, because her roommate had suddenly changed, and I thought she was sad because her roommate had changed. And they...
Oh boy. So she is torn up, as in the rest of the prison, about him, about the other guard passing away. And Susan comes to him wanting to have sex. He immediately assumes she's been having a relationship with her bunkmate. Well, I gotta tell you, I don't want to put bad things on this dead man, but sounds to me like there may have been something going on there. However, I don't think Susan cares when and how she gets it on.
They had been having sex, but no, she was talking about another officer that had just recently stopped seeing her all of a sudden for no reason. Come to find out it was for another inmate. And which I understand he finally married once he was terminated and she got out. A few weeks after that, they were married. And that really hit Susan hard.
She turned to you for comfort?
Well, that happened just a couple days before I was terminated. We had already had our relationship start. And I guess that's what she was doing, was turning to me as the replacement for that, even though I kind of thought it was replacement for one of the other girls. But it turned out it was for him.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, this guy is, or at least he was, a loser. Okay? He lost everything. Everything. To have sex with Susan Smith. And it just disgusts me beyond, guys. The attraction to these inmates by guards, I don't get it. I really don't. And this other one had a relationship with another inmate, quote unquote, broke it off with Susan. And he got fired because you're not allowed to have sex with the prisoners when you're a correctional officer. And then she gets out, the other girl, and they go run off and live happily ever after. But Poppy here, he just got fired and became infamously known as a correctional officer that had sex with Momster Susan Smith.
She initiated contact. She pursued it vigorously. And every time I was on duty, she would bring it up until it happened.
What do you say to those that say you share in some responsibility?
The responsibility is a 50-50 split in my mind. She's responsible because she knew better than to have relations with any staff member. It's laid out in their inmate handbook that they're issued the first day they arrive at the department, South Carolina Department of Corrections, intakes.
It's 50-50 because she knew better and she had a book. It told her everything that she had to do and know to be an inmate in the South Carolina correctional system. Well, I think it's more on your end, as far as I'm concerned, Alfred, because you were the guard. You're the corrections officer. You had the control, the ability to say no. You can come and go daily. She is behind bars, hopefully for the rest of her days. And I'm sure, and I can tell you, I'm more than sure, I can guarantee you that guards are not supposed to have relationships with the inmates. Because when they found out, you lost your job. So it's not 50-50, Alfred. I think it's more on your end. I don't know, maybe 70-30, 60-40, I don't know. I'm not going to play with the percentages. But as far as I'm concerned, Poppy Alfred, you need to take a lot of the blame for that.
And they're told to read it, learn it, and know it, and never lose it. And if something changes, they're immediately collected from everybody and exchanged one for one so that they've got the newest and latest version. So she knew better, but I was trained from the start not to get involved with inmates, not to fall for their request for things to be brought to them. And it was starting to get to the point that where more and more officers were carrying huge sacks under the arm called the sack phone to work, and not to let inmates use them because recording of their phone calls had already been initiated for every phone call, not just a random sampling, but every phone call was recorded. And so I knew better. She knew better. Responsibilities both ways. And probably even a little bit more my way because I was the one with the most to lose and the one with the authority to stop it. And should have. So it might.
Bingo. You got that right, Poppy. It should have been stopped from the moment it came to you. So you finally come to your senses as you say it out loud to the reporter.
Might even be more of a 60-40 split with me on the 60 side.
Why give in to her?
Her personality, the way she talked and approached, her reassurance that it would be our secret for life. So she knew one day I would leave, and I was working on some career moves outside of corrections. And a lot of people knew that. Susan probably had caught wind of it, but needless to say, none of that become possible after being terminated because my career in law enforcement immediately ended.
Susan Smith deserves to spend every last breathing moment of her life in prison. She took the lives of her two little boys. And remember, she was wet. She went out there and she had the opportunity to stop. She could have saved these boys. And remember her whole story about, I was gonna take my life too. But you didn't. Did you? You let those sweet little innocent children suffer. How you are just a monster, a momster. And again, she has not learned a damn thing. She manipulates people. She lies. She does whatever the hell she can in jail, in prison, to make her life better. She didn't care about that guard and he got in trouble. She didn't care about her bunkmates. She doesn't care about her ex-husband David, and she could care less, and almost, in my opinion, she could have hated her boys. Only thing that Susan Smith loves is herself. And because of that and how unremorseful she is, she just lacks any amount of it. She needs to stay in prison. And I'm praying that this parole board reads these letters, which they're not going to be public because they are private. They go right to the parole board. Listens to her ex-husband, the boy's father, David, and listens to basically the entire country and the world sees her history in the last 30 years of her disciplinary problems and relations with drugs and sex and God knows what else behind bars. Tells her to get her ass back into her cell, and no, you are never going to see the light of day outside of the rec hall or recreational area, whatever the hell they call that outside. She doesn't deserve happiness. And the fact that Poppy Alfred there, former guard, stated that she seems so happy all the time, that really pissed me off when I heard that. She shouldn't be happy. She hasn't done anything good in her life. And I hope the parole board sees right through her manipulative momster self. Alright guys, I hope you have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.